Morning. It's a pleasure to be with you. I think this is a landmark day for me because now I can say that I have spoken in every church at Unity Church in Northeast Ohio. So, and you know what they say, the last shall be first. So, boy, am I glad to be with you today. I have a quick question. Do we live stream? Yes. Oh, good. Because I have to tell a quick story about that kind of fits into this experience. Years ago, Ernest Wilson, who was known as the Dean of Unity Ministers and an incredible writer, served Unity for years. He was brought on by Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. When Myrtle passed away, Ernest had the responsibility of conducting her memorial service. By the late 40s, early 50s, Ernest was in Los Angeles in a ministry. And if you know that time period, that was the beginning of television. It's hard to think back that far, that there was just, and maybe a couple of television stations. Well, television was different in those days, and I remember when, they started the day, oftentimes with a prayer, and at night, after Johnny Carson, basically, you would see the image of a flag, and the Star-Spangled Banner would play, and that was the end of the television day. What was happening in Los Angeles at that time, when Dr. Wilson was minister of the large Unity Church in LA, he was invited to come to the television station every morning to lead the prayer to start the day, because everything was live. We didn't even have videotape then. So he would go in, and this brand new medium that was the equivalent of radio with pictures, sound and images, and Ernest would start the day by telling people to close their eyes and be silent. And so there was, in the radio and television industry, there's a great sin. It's called dead air, when nothing's happening. And so that was the beginning of dead air that was really alive and meaningful. So I think about that in this day when we have people viewing us online, and I ask them to close their eyes and be silent. So for a moment, the internet, at least as far as we're concerned, is still. So I just have to share that every time now because it's so relevant to the era that we live in. And the simple fact is, those of you that know me know I love stories. I really do. Well, do you like stories? Yeah. Good. Stories shaped our beliefs from our earliest childhood days. So our moral fiber was established by the stories that we were told. And these stories really were like little morality plays. They were spoken rather than performed. Many of us remember the story of George Washington as a child who chopped down the cherry tree with his little hatchet. I mean, we grew up with that, huh? So here's the interesting thing. As the story goes, when George was asked by his father, "Did you do this?" he said, "Nope, not me, Dad. I think it was that kid down the street. He's got a big axe and he never liked me." Now, my guess is you know that this story didn't end that way, did it? Of course not. We know that little Georgie responded to his father, and I'm going to ask you to say it with me because I know you know it. "I cannot tell a lie, I did it." That's how stories are ingrained in our consciousness, in our lives. Now my question is this, what do you think? Did this event really happen? Or is it, as they say, just the story? Well, whether or not you believe that it really happened isn't important. What's important is that you remembered it. What's important is that countless children learned the value of taking responsibility for their actions and telling the truth. Parents, grandparents read bedtime stories to their children and their grandchildren. We want our children to fall asleep with positive messages on their minds. But know this, stories are not just for putting children to sleep, they're for waking up adults. I have a story for you today. It's from ancient Turkey, and it teaches a very real, eternal truth and will help us to set our spiritual compass to true north, to orient and reorient us as we travel through this very noisy world. So, the lead character in our story, this is kind of the setup, all right? The lead character is Nasruddin Hoja. He's a 13th century itinerant teacher who was considered to be witty, wise, and a holy fool. Now, to be wise and a fool at the same time seems to be paradoxical. The Apostle Paul sheds light on this in his first letter to the Corinthians, where he writes, "Let no man deceive himself. If any man among you seems to be wise in this world, let him become a fool, that he may become wise. For wisdom of this world is foolishness with God." And we're about to see how that plays out in this story. And the story is the story of the woodchopper and his companion. It begins like this. Once upon a time, long, long ago and far away, there was a woodchopper. Now, the woodchopper is working in the edge of the forest, chopping wood. His job is to chop wood and sell it. That's how he makes his living. He has with him a companion, and the companion sits on the little cart that they will haul the wood into the town so that they could sell it. Nasruddin is riding his little donkey, and he comes across the woodchopper and the companion. And he sees this. Now get a picture for this, because this is really where this unfolds. The woodchopper is a big, burly, strong man with big arms. And he's got this very heavy axe, much heavier than what we talked about with little Georgie Washington. A big axe. And he raises the axe up and he brings it down on the wood. And every time he does, the companion who is sitting on the cart goes, "Ugh." Now you laugh, and Nasruddin's thinking the same thing. What is this? What is this? And so, being the wise, holy fool that he is, he asks the question. Every time the woodchopper brings the axe down, you go, "Ugh." Why do you do that? He said, "Well, I'm important. I bring encouragement." Nasruddin cannot contend with this. And so he leaves. He heads into the town. And oddly enough, not long afterwards, the woodchopper with a cart full of wood and the companion who's sitting on top of the cart, on top of the wood, pull into town. And when they do so, the woodchopper sells all of the wood. And when he does so, he gets a big bag of gold coins. And all of a sudden, the companion said, "You want to give me my share?" Now Nasruddin thinks, "Well, wait a minute. You didn't really do anything, did you?" He said, "Well, I was there and I gave encouragement and I deserve a share." At that moment, Nasruddin comes up and says, maybe I can solve the dilemma for you. And he says to one of the merchants, he says, give me a silver counting tray. And he takes the tray in his hand, and he takes the bag of gold from the woodchopper, and he holds it high above the tray, and he pours the gold onto the tray. And when he does, he looks at the companion and said, did you hear that? And the companion said, yes, I did. He says, no, did you really hear that? Yes, I did. And every time he says, did you hear that? The companion gets more excited because he knows he's going to get paid. And Nasruddin looks at him and he said, you gave noise and you got noise in return. You've been paid. Now, still today, we hear people unknowingly quote spiritual law. They do it in barbershops, hair salons, on loading docks, in the line at the grocery store, everywhere people gather. We hear spiritual law being expressed. Now, you get to take part in this experience. If you're familiar with other kinds of worship, you may have participated in what is known as a call and response, where the minister or the leader makes the call and the congregation makes the response. So we're going to do that today. Now, here's the interesting thing. I'll make the call, you make the response, but normally when we have a call and response, the congregation has something written down. They know how to respond. Well, I guarantee today you're going to know how to respond, because that is how powerful your knowledge of spiritual law is. Don't worry, you know this. You ready? Here we go. Here's the call. What goes around? Oh, look at you. Truly, truly, you understand spiritual law. Now, unfortunately, when someone says this, they're often expecting something negative to befall the person they're talking about. So what they're really saying when they say what goes around comes around, what they're really saying is, don't worry, he'll get his. Now, the great truth, though, is too often missed, and that is the law works for good, too. What we send out, we get back. If we send out noise, we get noise back. And the interesting thing is, this works on every level of life. Now, to know and understand the operation of this law can transform our lives and our experience. The law to which I'm referring is this. It is the law of cause and effect. And it states this: you cannot set in motion a cause on the invisible side of life without experiencing a like effect on the visible side of life. It is that simple. Now, it plays out in several ways, and we'll look at that. The law manifests primarily in three ways. First, it manifests on the mental plane. And we've called that, and you know this well, the law of mind action. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. That's what I like to call classic unity stuff. We know it so well that it just rolls off our tongues like gumballs out of a gumball machine. Unfortunately, too often we fail to bite down on those gumballs and get the flavor. So, Ella Wheeler Wilcox was an incredible poet who was known as the poet for the New Thought movement in its early days, and she wrote something that speaks to this in the most beautiful way, and I want to share it with you right now. She wrote this: you can never tell what your thoughts will do in bringing you hate or love, for thoughts are things and their airy wings are swifter than carrier doves. They follow the law of the universe. Each thing must create its kind, and they speed o'er the track to bring you back whatever went out from your mind. We know this is true. We live this on a regular basis. And for many people in the Unity movement, this idea of the law of mind action was, in fact, the highest of the laws. And that's because we were focused on mind and thought and that kind of work. But ultimately, it's cause and effect that shows up as thoughts and things. Now, on the emotional plane, it functions as well. But we call it there the law of sowing and reaping. As you sow, so shall you reap. Sure, sure. Now, one of the great mystics of history is a fellow by the name of William Blake. He wrote incredible poetry. He was an artist as well. He has a gold on black painting of the Last Supper that is just transformative. And I love his work in so many ways, but he wrote a piece called The Divine Image, and it kind of speaks to this as well. And he writes this: to mercy, pity, pace, and love, all pray in their distress, and to these virtues of delight, return their thankfulness. For mercy, pity, peace, and love is God our Father dear, and mercy, pity, peace, and love is man, his child in care. For mercy has a human heart, pity a human face, and love the human form divine, and peace the human dress. Then every man in every clime that prays in his distress, prays to the human form divine, love, mercy, pity, peace. And all must love the human form in heathen, Turk, or Jew, where mercy, love, and pity dwell, their God is dwelling too. What an incredible emotional response to this law. On the physical plane, and yes, we are physical beings, beautiful physical beings, enjoying a physical experience infused by divine life, we acknowledge our humanness. So we recognize that on a human level, the law works as this law of giving and receiving. You know this: as you give, so shall you receive. Nothing new about that. Nothing new about that. But the kicker on this particular stage is one little word, the word as. As you give, so shall you receive. So if we look at what that word means, and I think this can be a lot of fun, imagine this. Here we are in a concert hall, and you might be the audience, and for this moment, I will be only in your imaginations, an opera singer. And recognizing that I'm not an opera singer, if someone were to write a review the next day in the newspaper of my singing, it might sound something like this. As the opera singer sang, the audience threw tomatoes. But see what's happening? Two things at the same time. As I sing, you throw tomatoes. As you give, so shall you receive. At the same time. The only lag is in our own minds, because it's happening right here and right now. Now, it's also important to recognize that the word as means in the same manner and to the same degree. In other words, give lovingly and receive lovingly. Give half-heartedly or reluctantly and receive half-heartedly and reluctantly. I've said for years in ministry, bless every gift you give. The blessing is probably more important than the gift, and it always makes the gift go farther. Because it's the attitude the mindset, the heartfeltness of the gift that we give that makes all the difference in the world. So, the bottom line is our real work is a work in consciousness. And it's a work with this first cause or primary cause that we call God. And as we do so, we set in motion new causes. This is the beauty here. Whatever has gone in the past is gone. This is the moment of power, right here and right now. And here we set new causes in motion, and then we get what? New effects in our lives, new results. The secondary causes are set in motion by holding in mind the thoughts that are right and true, by empowering those thoughts with the love of our hearts, and by ensuring that our actions in the world are in harmony with our thoughts and feelings. Something just came to mind, not in my notes, but I'll share it with you. Years ago, 50 plus years ago, I went into a used bookstore and I found a book, and it was a quarter. Couldn't go wrong. That's what I thought. And I opened it and I read it. I thought, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. And I kept reading through this thing, and it's like, this is not it. This is not what I'm about. This is not. And then I came to the next page, and there was what was called a prayer of good intention. And I got to tell you, when you hear this, you're going to realize it was the best quarter I ever spent. I read this, and it said, each thought, each word, each deed of mine shall be an act of love divine, and everything I say and do shall be, dear God, for love of you. Whew. Wow. Now, if you ask me what was in the rest of that book, I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. Never read past that page, never needed to. Because that book at that moment was meant for me to hear those words. And they have stayed with me ever since. What we know is the world is full of noise. And if we give our attention and our effort and our energy to the noise, just like the woodchopper's companion, we're going to get noise in return. I can go home now. Now, let's think about this. The noise in the world manifests in a specific way. It manifests as disease, poverty, sadness that impact far too many people worldwide. If we understand and actualize the law of cause and effect, remembering that the law states that you cannot set in motion on the invisible plane of life anything without experiencing a like effect on the visible side of life, we can bring healing to a world that needs what we offer. Now, here's if you don't remember anything else, remember this. As within, so without. And maybe more importantly, if we don't go within, we will surely go without. Without the good we desire, without the health, wealth, and happiness that is our divine heritage as rich children of a loving Father. So where do we begin? This story needs a story. Now, many of you remember the television program Lassie. I loved that. Little dog just did so much. And the story was the same every week. Little Timmy got in trouble. Lassie got him out of trouble. And they ended at the kitchen table with Timmy's dad giving us the moral to the story. Remember, these are all morality plays. And he would say the same thing. He'd say, "You see, Timmy?" And when you hear "you see, Timmy," you know the moral's coming next. So what's the moral to this story? What's the you see, Timmy? Well, Henry Drummond, who was a Scottish Presbyterian clergyman and theologian, wrote something incredibly powerful. He said, "This world is not merely a place to live in, but to see in. We are to pass through it as clairvoyants, holding the whole temporal world as a vast transparency through which the light of the eternal shines." This seeing, the eternal shining through of all creation, sets new causes in motion, and according to spiritual law, must be expressed on the visible side of life. And it must be expressed visible to the world as health, wealth, and happiness, individually, as a congregation, as a community, and as our world, because the law is that big. So this is our work in consciousness, and this is what we do in our daily prayer life. So, remember, you are a point in time and space where God is made manifest to the world. And because you know what goes around comes around, you make a difference in the world. That, my friends, is the truth about you and about me. God bless you. I love you, each and every one.